Hello, I'm so thrilled to welcome you to the very first episode of my podcast. If you don't know me, my name is Jan, and in this podcast, we are going to explore all the links between mindset, lifestyle, self care, nutrition, sports, everything that will help us to unlock our inner power and live our best lives. I see that the first live viewers are joining, so welcome, welcome, welcome. Feel free to ask any question if you are watching live. We'll be very happy to have some interaction with the audience. And for our kickoff episode, I am so beyond excited to have a truly special guest today. This woman that I'm going to do this live with is such a major inspiration. I always say like my life is a spinoff of one conversation that I have had with her. Her name is Julie Wren, and I'm gonna let her join. Let's see, how can we do? I sent the invitation, and Julie is joining.
Hi, Jan. Sorry,
Julie!
I need to turn my camera around.
Great, so nice. Go
Thank you.
live.
Nice to be here.
Yes, yes. Well, I gave you a little bit an introduction. I said you're like the inspiration behind everything I'm doing right now, but perhaps for the viewers, you can introduce yourself.
Thank you. So, I am in the world of wellness for many, many years now, and it's my passion. I have trained as a nutritional therapist, a health coach. I'm also a spa educator and a World Wellness Weekend ambassador. So my whole life revolves around helping people find their way to well-being, because wellness is not really one thing for everybody. It's many things for different people. So I always say that well-being is the destination and wellness is the way to get there. And today we're very lucky to be able to talk all things to do with skin well-being and skin wellness.
Yes, yes, because a few years ago we had like such an interesting podcast about how mindset actually influences
Yeah.
the way our skin appears. And ever every time I listen to that episode again, I'm like, oh my God, Jan, you didn't know anything what you were talking about. So you really send me through the rabbit hole by introducing me to all that stuff there. So
Yeah.
how did you start seeing like the link between the two?
I suppose it's with my work through an Italian skincare brand that's very much into holistic well-being. And, we had the very fortunate opportunity to work with a very famous neuroscientist who's also, very much studying the skin and the mind and the gut as well. So she kind of like really opened my eyes to this possibility. But I suppose when you truly think about it, our face is always telling our story and how we're feeling on the inside. So I think that we've always had that innate knowledge that there was a connection, but perhaps we didn't know quite how to explain it, or scientifically, was there evidence there for us to see that connection? But I always say the skin is not like a suit you put on in the morning. The suit is so connected to you that for me, there was always kind of like this innate knowledge there somehow that there was a connection, even though I didn't, couldn't explain it perhaps as well as I do now back then.
Yes, because I have like with the relaunch of Skin Regimen, I found this drawing again. You probably remember about the exposome, about which things that we can control actually are aging accelerators.
Yes.
And point one is mind, and like the thoughts you think, the stress you experience, lifestyle, food, and movement. And you know, I've got it here in this beautiful list for all my clients to see, because the more I look at it, the more I really see like all these parameters aren't only like how we age, but how well our life is spent in general.
Exactly. And if you think about that it's kind of like almost like a double-edged sword, isn't it? When we think about our skin, what do we see when we look in the mirror? How do we feel about ourselves? That can also influence our mental
Yes.
well-being. So,
Yes.
so while we have, yes, stress has been proven to show that it has a damaging effects on the skin. It weakens the skin barrier, makes the skin more dehydrated, can make us have more oily skin. But similarly, if I'm not feeling good in my skin,
Yeah.
then that could also be leading to feelings of anxiety. Perhaps also I have a low self-esteem, low body image.
Yes.
So you feel it kind of like there is, you can't talk about one thing without the
No.
other.
It's and you can really see how some people get trapped in a vicious circle
Yeah.
that way.
Mm.
So yeah, like
Yeah.
Julie, for because everything is connected. Also, the
Yeah.
previous time we also talked about like the gut link, and for me, for example, when I started eating more protein, I also saw that reflected in my skin. Um, Not that we're going that way now during this episode, but like if somebody is bothered with the skin they see in the mirror,
Yeah.
what would you suggest to be like a good starting point?
But it depends on what that problem is, isn't it? I mean, what are we just dissatisfied with the way we look, or are we noticing more dark circles under our eyes, for example, a little bit more puffiness? Let's just take some of those things which are perhaps more related to living a fast life. You know, we're staying up too late, we're looking at screen time, and we're getting those darker circles. So if that's something that we are feeling dissatisfied with, then honing in on where is the root cause? What could I be doing that could be aggravating that problem? Because we all know as well that when you spend too much screen time, that UV light can also be very damaging to the skin. That type of light, sorry, that blue light, that type of uh, light that we have emitting from our
Yeah,
devices and also from the television, you know, that's going to have an aging effect. So where I think always has to roll back with, there is no magic pill.
no,
I want to make that super clear. You know, you have to do the work. And it also means digging a little deep. And sometimes that can be confrontational. So it's about, if I'm dissatisfied, how did I get to where I am today? And there's no shaming, there's no
no,
blaming. It's all about a self-awareness of what got me here isn't going to get me where I want to go with my skin.
no.
So it's acknowledging that perhaps some of our choices have been less than helpful for our skin
Yes.
health.
Because an example that you give about the screen time, you can, it's not just a habit of always scrolling on Instagram and always wanting to have the next dopamine hit with the next notification. It's also like asking yourself the question, what am I trying to escape? Why do I feel so uncomfortable just sitting here enjoying how comfy my couch feels?
And I think as well, what we also do is we kind of almost set ourselves up for failure a little bit when we have comparatitis, if I can create a word there. I think people have often used that word, isn't it? We're always comparing ourselves to somebody else as opposed to being happy in the skin we've got and actually working to make that skin the healthiest and the best that it can possibly be
Yeah.
by taking care of our inner world. That's not just necessarily what we eat, but also what we
Yes.
think. And you know as well as I do that we can get so wrapped up in
In our own.
in this virtual world that we forget to live in the real
Yeah.
world.
Yes, yes.
Take those fresh
Yes,
walks
that's
in.
why I say I think for many people living in that virtual world is some kind of escape.
Yeah.
But why do you want to escape? Why don't you want to live now? It's yeah, and it's for everybody different. But the thing that I see the most is for example people who come over for treatments and they have like a flare up of eczema, and then they're like, yeah, it's normal because I've been very stressed lately. But it's as if everybody thinks it's normal to have a lot of stress lately.
Well, I mean, stress is not a bad thing. I mean, there is positive stress. It's called EU stress. And as I joked last week, this is not the kind of stress we get from Brussels when I say EU stress, but it's a positive amount of stress really helps us to grow. If
You need to
think
be
about it,
comfortable.
when you go to the gym and you're working out, you're stressing your body in a way that's helping your muscles to grow. It's when it becomes chronic and that load becomes so unbearable that it becomes unhealthy for us. So it's looking at stress is like, what is my stress level? And and I don't like to talk about bouncing back from stress. It's about how do we get through it? How do we bounce through it? How do we create let's say routines in our lives and rituals that help us deal with what comes along? We can't put ourselves in a bubble right now. The world is a very stressful place. What's happening around us is not going to go away anytime soon, but it's how we're reacting to it that is really important, and how our internal world is able to react to it. And again, that's something that would be showing up on the skin. If we become highly stressed, maybe we're getting lots of breakouts, and that's something that we normally associate with younger adults or teenagers. But it can happen to any of us that amount of stress just produces for us the reaction that means that we start seeing things popping up on the skin that we don't like.
Yes.
I'm in my 50s. Why do I need a spot? I don't need a spot right now. That kind of thing.
It's like the stress you experience causes inflammation in the body, not only in the skin, but in the entire body. And it's not only that. If I look at myself, for example, there used to be a time, I think 6-7 years ago, that I was constantly worried. And the thing is, if you would have told me, Jan, you look worried, I would have said like, but I'm not. Because everything that I was worried about seems for me to be like normal. It was normal to be worried about the news. It was normal to be worried about your business. It's normal to be, name it. And now I really see like, all those things that I gave my attention to, I did have a choice. Even I didn't want to own that back then, but I did have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, they've been doing studies as well to look at things that more serious things like, when you have rosacea or psoriasis, to look at the link there as well between the brain and the gut, and that link back to inflammation. So whenever you've got an inflammatory problem within your body or a situation like that, the stress, chronic stress, and I emphasize here the chronic stress, will actually be driving that. And yes, while we may say, "Oh, I can do this," I'm, because maybe again we've grown up and we've been conditioned to get on with it. Get on with it. Don't have a day off. But I would say to anybody, build some time into your day to just tune in, even if it's just for 5 minutes, to tune into your body and really notice how it's feeling. And that requires a little bit of practice. But even in the morning when you wake up, you can say, how am I feeling today? What does my body need? And if you feel that your skin is burning or your skin is tight, and you can then sort of say, well, what would I like? Because I think innately, again, we know inside us what we need to do, but we are not connecting enough to those body feelings by giving ourselves time.
And now, for example, I can really feel for, let's say, lately I had this not anger, but I was like, why am I feeling this? And then I started scanning my body, and I really felt it in my throat. And it was a kind of a situation where I exactly had the feeling like I wasn't able to speak up, to voice what I was experiencing, and I really felt it physically in my throat. But I think a few years ago I never would have been able to identify that, because it needs some fine-tuning.
And while last week I was following a summit called the Stress and Burnout Summit, and within that they were saying that some people may find being mindful or doing meditation quite confrontational. So I think it's about starting small and finding something that really resonates with you, that you can really get behind and make it yours. So as I say, there's no one prescription here. It's really about helping people to discover, as I say, their way to well-being. And it means what could work for you might not work for somebody else. But there are so many modalities out there that we can try. And one of the most easiest things in the world is breathing. We all have to breathe, but how we breathe can make a huge difference. So we can do a breathing technique, which is, so many on the in, but longer on the out breath,
Yes.
which is going to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the one that calms us down. Mm-hmm. So even just learning how to do some simple breathing techniques, and especially, if you're in a situation and you feel yourself going really red, and that can obviously then be embarrassing when people say, oh, my skin really flares up when I get nervous. Just doing those nice breathing exercises and perhaps using a little spray to calm down the heat in the skin can be so soothing that you can just bring yourself very quickly out of that fight or flight response, which is what's happening when we're stressed.
Just accepting that this is the feeling you're experiencing right now. I always find relief when I just say like, okay, you feel this right now. It's the way it is. It's most suffering is in the fighting against. While if you just say like, okay, experience this now, I'm gonna take a few breaths and I'm gonna let it pass.
Another way is also ask yourself, where did that come from? When you feel yourself getting angry or you feel yourself in a situation, it's like, oh, what do I need to do? How do I need to take a step back? Do I need to do some breathing? Do I need just to pause? It's like so I read somewhere recently that somebody was talking about the power of the pause, just pausing.
Yeah.
And that just that time that you give yourself to pause and wait. Think, oh my gosh, we're not used to that, are we?
No.
We're always rush, but just not doing anything.
Yeah. Well, I feel the pulse right now.
Yeah.
Julie, what I wanted to ask you, you were one of the first who got to read my book that's going to be published in December.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you would like to add to it or discuss about it? But no, my real question is the following. Could you ever have imagined while we were having that conversation a few years ago that it would lead to the publishing of a book?
Honestly, not at all. Because again, this is ideas, isn't it? You're planting seeds, you're planting ideas. You have no idea whether they're actually going to take root. And they're going to sprout and they're going to grow, which is the most amazing thing. So I really congratulate you on that of nurturing that little seed that was planted and turning it into something amazing. And like you say in the book, this is your story and this is your interpretation of it. But I think it comes across so well that people can really identify with it. There's a hell of a lot of information out there, and I think that can become overwhelming for people. But when you have something like this book, I think it's going to be really practical because it's going to help people actually do. Because it's not a lack of knowing, it's a lack of doing, I think. And we all sometimes get scared. It's like, my gosh, we put the bar so high, I don't think I can ever achieve that. Whereas if we just be with it and have something like this, which is a very practical guide, and we can, you did it, we can try it out. People can identify with that. And I think that's a really important thing, is to have that. It's like a guidebook, isn't it? It's like something to help guide you that's a no nonsense, that's easy to understand. So I think keep going, keep doing it. And, that science is moving so quickly at the moment that maybe in a year or two's time, you've got something else you wish to add to that. So I think it's something that can grow as well as we
learn. Every time I reread it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can fine tune this part. I can do better on that part. It's like, I feel like the book grows together with me. and
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I think it should do. All those kind, if we talk about self-help books and guidebooks and things like that, they're not something to be left on a shelf.
No.
There's something to be pulled down, opened, and I think we always find the moment when we need something, and it's great to have something that's easy to be able to, and I don't mean that in a negative way, easy, but because I know it took you a good amount of energy to write it. But I mean, what I want is it's so practical.
Yeah.
That it can make it very easy for people to say, right, I think I want to go back to that today and I want to read that chapter again. And people will take away from it something that will be of value to them. So it's not always about reading the whole book. Sometimes it's about, going back to sections and finding things that resonate,
Yes.
isn't it?
Were you aware during that conversation that you were planting seeds?
As an educator, I guess you're always trying to plant seeds.
Okay.
I think that's the one thing that I've always been in education most of my career in some shape or form. So, if you can inspire, I would say if you can inspire one person in the class, you're doing well.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes sometimes to make a change, isn't it? Is to have one person take your idea and work on it and develop it. And that's all I ask for, is that, at least some small part of me, if you like, that I'm giving during my training lands in somebody's ears and in their minds, and they feel that they could develop it.
Yeah. It also needs some level of being able to just give without expecting back.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wish I could remember the actual saying now, but they say an educator is somebody that builds a bridge for somebody else, and then when that person's crossed that bridge, it gracefully collapses. Obviously, I'm not wishing to collapse anytime soon.
No.
But the whole point is that we're transmitting information, we are transmitting experiences, and without any expectation of anything coming back. I love being an educator.
Yeah, it's I don't know if I ever told you that, but you were my first real professional educator, and back in the day I took everything so for granted just because I didn't have any way of comparison with other educators, other brands. I just thought like, it's gonna be like this everywhere. And it was only after that I was like, whoa, what she's doing is actually so beyond. It's amazing what you do. So I'm
bless you. Yeah.
grateful that you always share your new insights. And what do you do to stay inspired?
I am a lifelong learner. I have to say that there's always something around the corner that's interesting me. Today I jumped on a webinar all about medicinal mushrooms. So and tomorrow I'm going to be learning all about methylation, diving deeper into that subject that we know about, don't we, with skin regimen, that's quite complicated. So I'm a lifelong learner. I will always look for the next opportunity to test my brain, because it's a big brain, but it can be even bigger. I want to be able to make sure that I keep learning, and so that means reading, keeping abreast of different things, having a list of things that I know a bit about, but I'd like to know more about. So finding and building time in my agenda for that is important. Don't do enough of it sometimes, but when I can, I really do try to up. I think, in England we call it CPD, continuing professional development. And I think that is something absolutely valuable in any industry, is just keeping abreast of what's happening, keeping yourself fresh and excited, because you never know where your next big idea is going to come from.
Yes, and keep on being aware of the fact that you don't know everything and that you can keep on improving. Sometimes I have those days that I wake up and there was a book I've read recently, and it's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. And now sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I'm curious what life's gonna throw at me today that I can handle. And yeah, it's a
Yeah.
fun way to look at it like that. Do you have something like a morning practice, morning routine, something that you always try to do to take control?
I would say that I struggle with consistency, and I'm always telling my clients as well, we need to be consistent. But because of my lifestyle, because I travel a lot,
Yeah.
I find it quite hard to have some regularity with a routine as such. But what I do is my body scan. In the bed, I'm just lying there in the bed in the morning and waking up and I'm thinking, okay, what kind of a night have I had? What's my day going to be like? What am I grateful for? What's going to happen today? And how do I feel about it? And when I'm home, my absolute go-to is a bike ride on the riverbank. And I had the most amazing bike ride yesterday. Sun coming up, beautiful view. So I get very nourished by nature. And so whenever I can, I like to get out in it. And that could be a daily walk, or it could be, I say, a bike ride. But that my favorite morning routine is an early morning bike ride, and then or a little bit of stretching, and obviously this body scan.
Okay, nice. I have one more question for you, and it was actually a question that one of my, you know her as well, Rochelle. She's comfort zone trainer in the US. And she said to certainly ask you which kinds of superfoods are your favorites for the skin.
Do you know what? There is this word superfood, isn't there? I mean, there are so many superfoods that you probably wouldn't think are a superfood. Like this time of year, you could walk out into the hedgerows and you could start looking at things like rosehip, very high in vitamin C, or blueberries that we've just had in the summertime, blackberries. Those are all what I call fabulous superfoods. So, in terms of for the skin, one of the things I do love a lot, which comes actually from more of the Scandinavian and the Baltic countries, is something called sea buckthorn.
Never heard
And it's very, very rich sea buckthorn oil, Durndorn in Dutch. It's incredibly rich and powerful in vitamins, but also in plant chemicals that are very good for your skin. It has lots of the oils in there as well, which are great for the skin. So like omega-9s and 6s. For me, fish is a superfood for the skin because of the omega-3 content. So anything with omega-3 in its body ready form, because obviously we can get omega-3 from things like chia seeds or walnuts, but your body has to actually process that to be able to use it. So yes, fish is a superfood. That fruits, any dark fruits as well are very great. What else? Gosh, because I think I know because I look at all food, all real food as being superfoods for the skin. You need your proteins, you need your vitamins and minerals, things that are high in zinc, selenium. They're all brilliant for the skin. Anything that promotes anti-inflammatory responses. So I'm not a fan of powders, I have to say. I prefer to do a food first approach. Let's get your diet, as I said, there's no magic pill. Let's get the diet sorted out first, and then if we need to, we can supplement. So food is my superfood.
Yes.
Real food.
Because it would really be like crazy if you start applying your serums or creams or treatments to stimulate collagen production, and then you don't give the building blocks your body needs to build the collagen,
Yeah, and I would wind back a bit further on that. I mean, people always used to say you are what you eat, but actually you are what you are able to absorb. So even though we're not talking about gut health in this particular session, we still cannot not include it in the story because it has a huge role to play as well in the gut, brain, skin axis. But also, if you're not able to absorb the nutrients, you could be putting as much as you want in your body, and all you'll end up with is very expensive pee. Because if you can't actually take up and use those nutrients that you're ingesting, whether it's, I'm talking about supplements there, then what's the point? Good gut health is also the key to a great skin.
Okay.
and a happy mind.
Now that you said that, like, what's necessary for good gut health?
Well, making sure that your gut integrity, the barrier in your lining of your gut is healthy, which means keeping your happy microbiome flourishing, and making sure that we're not damaging that.
I saw
there are
something on Netflix lately about it was also about gut health and how it's all connected. And one of the problems we have, like, in our society is the majority of the food you can buy in the supermarket is hyper processed, right?
Yeah. I mean, that again is a choice, isn't it? Ultra,
Yes.
what they call ultra processed food.
Oh yeah, ultra.
But it doesn't really look like food anymore, or it's been. if you look at the list of what's in it, we can still have like a processing. If you have a canning is processing food, but a can of tomatoes is not as bad, as you would imagine, or a tinned fish as fresh fish. But sometimes they're even better if you like frozen fish, for example. But what I'm trying to say is that it's a choice of what's on your plate, and is that serving you or is that not serving you in terms of your gut health?
Yeah, but that's also like, I see, like, a lot of the times when I'm walking in the supermarket and I see a person and then I see their shopping cart, I'm like, okay, makes sense, that you really see, like, but if you don't feel good in your skin, it's also difficult to make the right food choices. But by not making the right choices that you put in your body, it's also difficult to feel good, and it's again another vicious cycle.
It is, because whatever you put, you need to have really, in order to make like connections in the brain work, like, with things like neurotransmitters, you have to have the building blocks to be able to make them.
Yes.
And then also you start to feed into something called the dopamine hit, which is that pleasure, that kind of like satisfaction. And foods can be incredibly addictive. And that's when, again, you get stuck in a little bit of a loop there sometimes, with that you're turning to different foods to fulfill perhaps an emotional need. But that is not able, it's kind of like, again, like a vicious circle, because if the building blocks are not there to build the neurotransmitters and to build up, let's say the pathways that you need to have functioning properly, then you get into this sort of like a fug, and it becomes very difficult to get out of it. So it's always, I always say to my clients, it's like, what's the next best step that you can take that's going to get you closer to where you want to go? So if it was something to do with gut health and you're not having enough vegetables, get vegetables. Very simple. Develop a list and see what you're eating. And if you're not eating enough of a variety, then that would be your aim, would be to get more veg in your life. So if we try to
also
it becomes like impossible.
Not trying to jump too far all of a sudden.
Absolutely. So it's always about, I always say in health coaching, because you can, as a nutritional therapist, I can advise you what to do, but are you going to do it?
Probably.
No. It's an entirely different ball game. So when you're coaching somebody, it's helping them to find their way that works for them.
Yeah.
So we switch in and out of, like, this is what I recommend you do, but let's work out how are you going to achieve that.
Yeah.
What needs to change? Is it mindset that needs to change? Is it learning a new skill that you have to do? Maybe not everybody is gifted in the kitchen and they want to eat healthily, but they don't know how. So is it learning some basic cooking skills, or shopping?
It's also, there used to be a time that I could not imagine that I would not eat my daily little bowl of potato chips in front of the TV. And then I read a tip somewhere, and it was just like, slice a sweet potato in different slices, bake it in the oven, and it's my substitute for chips, and I actually like it more. Yeah. Because lately I've eaten some chips again. I was like, it was too flavored, too much for me. but
Yeah.
it's like a little change, but
Yep.
well, it made a difference in my gut health, but also in my body composition. You know, once every while in the gym I go, they measure my body composition. So, and that little change, because that little change was applied daily, it made a huge impact.
Yep.
I
So
think
it's always
that,
like, what's the next biggest thing? So if anybody's listening to this and you want to make a change, think about the one next thing that could get you the biggest change that you could make. And it could be a small change, but it has the biggest impact. What's the next best thing you can do to change and move yourself in the direction that you want to go in?
yes, I think that's a beautiful question to, not question, a beautiful sentence to wrap it up. Huh?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing
My
your wisdom,
pleasure.
Julie. Next week, on Saturday, I'm having a talk with Stijn Bijnens. I don't know if you know him, but he's also a professional educator in the field who specializes in calming down the nervous system.
Ooh,
Yes.
great.
So, and he, you know, I've heard him talk a few times before, and he takes something that's most of the time talked about in like a very spiritual meaning, but he makes it very physical, very approachable, very common sense.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that one, but that one will be in Dutch because he's more fluent in, but you can understand Dutch as well.
Yep.
So,
No, I look forward to that. Thank you, Jan, so much for having me.
yes,
And good luck to everybody on your skin mind journey.
yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much,
Thank
Julie.
you.
Have a nice evening.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.